They say vampires don't exist. But what if I told you there's a castle in Romania where the walls still whisper screams from 5 centuries ago? Where a ruler impaled 20,000 people in a single day and drank wine while watching them die slowly? Where forests hide secrets so dark that even locals refuse to enter after sunset? This isn't fiction. This isn't Hollywood. This is Romania, the birthplace of the world's most terrifying legend. And the truth? It's far more horrifying than any movie could ever show you. If you love your country, subscribe now. And if you love your mother, drop a comment below. Let's rewind to 1431. Eastern Europe is burning. The Ottoman Empire is expanding like a plague, swallowing kingdoms whole. Between two colliding worlds, Christian Europe and the Islamic Ottoman force, sits a small principality called Wallachia. Sandwiched between mountains and monsters, this land would become the breeding ground for history's darkest figure. Romania wasn't even called Romania back then. It was fractured into 3 regions: Wallachia, Moldavia, and Transylvania. Each fought for survival against Hungarian kings from the west and Turkish sultans from the east. Imagine living in a place where every day could be your last. Where invasion wasn't a possibility, but a certainty. Where children grew up knowing the smell of burning villages. In this chaos, a boy was born in the fortress town of Sighisoara. His father, Vlad II, had just been inducted into the Order of the Dragon, an elite group of knights sworn to defend Christianity. They gave him the name Dracul, meaning dragon. But in Romanian, Dracul also means devil. His son would inherit both meanings. His name? Vlad III. But history would remember him differently. Vlad Dracula, Vlad the Impaler. When Vlad was just 11 years old, his father made a devil's bargain. To keep peace with the Ottoman Empire, he handed over his own sons as hostages. Young Vlad and his brother Radu were dragged to the Turkish court and held prisoner for 6 years. Can you imagine? A child torn from his home, forced to live among enemies who could execute him any moment. Those 6 years in captivity twisted something inside Vlad. He witnessed Ottoman brutality firsthand. Their methods of torture, their psychological warfare, their absolute ruthlessness. The Turks used impalement as their signature execution. A wooden stake driven through the body, positioned carefully to avoid vital organs so the victim would die slowly over days. Vlad watched. He learned. He remembered every scream. Meanwhile, back in Wallachia, betrayal festered like an open wound. In 1447, Wallachian nobles allied with Hungary and murdered Vlad's father. They buried him alive. His older brother Mircea was captured, tortured, and buried alive too, but not before they burned his eyes out with red-hot stakes. When news reached young Vlad in his Turkish prison, something inside him shattered. Or maybe something darker awakened. By 1456, Vlad had escaped and clawed his way to power. He returned to Wallachia not as a frightened boy, but as something else entirely. Something forged in pain and rage. At just 25 years old, he seized the throne with one singular obsession: revenge. Not just against his family's killers, against everyone who had turned Wallachia into a playground for foreign powers. The political situation was a nightmare. Corrupt nobles, called boyars, had been selling out Wallachia for decades, switching allegiances between Hungary and the Ottoman Empire like traders at a market. They had killed his father and brother. They had fractured the nation. Vlad looked at this corruption and decided on a radical solution: absolute terror. His first act as ruler sends chills down your spine even today. He invited all the boyar families to an Easter feast at his court. They came dressed in their finest clothes, expecting celebration. After the meal, Vlad stood and asked a simple question: how many princes have ruled Wallachia in your lifetimes? The oldest boyars boasted they had seen 7 princes come and go. Vlad smiled. Then he gave the order. Guards seized every single person in that hall. The older boyars and their families were impaled immediately on stakes planted around the palace. The younger ones? Vlad forced them to march 50 miles to a ruined mountain fortress. There, still wearing their Easter clothes, they were enslaved and forced to rebuild the castle stone by stone. Many died from exhaustion. Those who survived became walking skeletons. This fortress still stands today. We know it as Poenary Castle, but legends call it Castle Dracula. This was just the beginning. Vlad implemented a reign of terror so systematic, so calculated, that it redefined cruelty. He didn't just want to punish criminals and traitors. He wanted to rebuild Wallachian society through absolute fear. Merchants who cheated customers were impaled. Thieves were impaled. Adulterers were impaled. Beggars and disabled people who couldn't work. He invited them to a feast, locked the doors, and burned the building to the ground. His reasoning? He was solving poverty. Foreign ambassadors who refused to remove their hats in his presence had those hats nailed to their skulls. A Turkish envoy who complained about the smell of rotting corpses around the palace was impaled on an extra tall stake, lifted higher so he could be above the stench. When a woman's husband complained that his shirt was too short, Vlad had the woman's hands cut off and mounted on a stake, with a sign explaining she was a lazy wife. The numbers are staggering. Conservative estimates suggest Vlad III impaled between 40,000 to 100,000 people during his 6-year reign. Some chronicles report single events where thousands died. In 1459, on St. Bartholomew's Day, he impaled 30,000 merchants and officials in the Transylvanian city of Brașov, then sat among the forest of dying bodies and ate his breakfast while admiring his work. But here's what makes Vlad truly terrifying. It worked. Crime in Wallachia dropped to virtually zero. A golden cup was placed in the central square of Targovist, free for anyone to use and return. It was never stolen. Roads became safe. Corruption evaporated. Through absolute horror, Vlad created order from chaos. The question that haunts historians: was he a monster or a desperate patriot using the only language his era understood? Violence? The Ottoman Empire certainly took notice. Sultan Mehmed II, the conqueror who had destroyed Constantinople, assembled an army of 150,000 men to crush this upstart prince. It was 1462. The invasion force crossed the Danube expecting an easy victory. What they found instead would be remembered as one of history's most disturbing psychological warfare victories. Close your eyes and picture this. You're a Turkish soldier in Sultan Mehmed's massive army. You've conquered cities across 3 continents. You've seen battlefields. You've seen death. You march into Wallachia expecting another weak principality to fall before your empire's might. The summer heat is oppressive. Dust coats your throat. Then you smell it. At first, you think it's a dead animal. But the smell gets worse. Stronger. Sweet and rotten and wrong. Your commanding officer's face goes pale. Horses start refusing to move forward. Then you see it. Rising through the morning mist like something from a nightmare. A forest, but not of trees. Stakes. Thousands and thousands of wooden stakes. Each one holding a rotting corpse. Turkish prisoners of war. Bulgarian mercenaries. Wallachian traitors. Men, women, children, impaled and left to decay in the summer sun. The bodies stretch for miles. 20,000 corpses in various stages of decomposition, arranged in perfect geometric rows. Some have been there for weeks, reduced to skeletal horrors. Others are fresh, still moving slightly, still dying. This was the forest of the impaled. Vlad's welcome message to Sultan Mehmed II. And it worked. The Sultan, who had witnessed the fall of Constantinople, who had commanded armies across Europe and Asia, took one look at this horror and reportedly vomited. His generals begged to retreat. Even his elite janissaries, warriors taken as children and trained to feel no fear, refused to advance further into this cursed land. The massive Ottoman invasion force turned around and left. One man had defeated an empire with pure psychological terror. But who was this man really? Was Vlad Dracula a sadistic psychopath who enjoyed torture? Or was he a brilliant, ruthless leader who understood that in his violent era, only extreme measures could save his people? The answer might be both. And that's what makes his story so disturbing. Romanian historians today remain deeply divided on Vlad's legacy. Walk into any bookshop in Bucharest, and you'll find 2 completely different versions of the same man. Some books paint him as Vlad the hero, the patriot who stood against impossible odds and kept Romania independent. Folk songs still celebrate him as the defender who said no when everyone else bowed to foreign powers. Elderly Romanians will tell you with pride that Vlad created a nation where you could leave gold in the street and nobody would touch it. But others see Vlad the monster, a war criminal whose cruelty crossed every moral line. Modern human rights scholars point out that his victims included countless innocent civilians. Children, families, entire villages destroyed not for rebellion, but simply to send a message. Psychological experts have retrospectively diagnosed him with antisocial personality disorder, sadism, possibly even psychopathy. The man clearly derived some form of satisfaction from his methods. You don't eat lunch surrounded by dying people unless something is broken inside you. The Romanian government faces a strange dilemma with Vlad's memory. On one hand, he's their most famous historical figure and a massive tourist draw. Bran Castle, falsely marketed as Dracula's castle, brings in millions of tourism dollars annually. On the other hand, how do you celebrate a man whose signature achievement was perfecting impalement techniques? In 2019, this tension exploded into controversy. The city of Bucharest unveiled plans for a massive Dracula theme park, a $3 billion project featuring a castle replica, themed attractions, and medieval reenactments. International human rights organizations immediately condemned it. You wouldn't build a Hitler theme park, they argued. Why celebrate a mass murderer? The project stalled, caught between tourism potential and ethical concerns. As of today, it remains unbuilt, a perfect symbol of Romania's unresolved relationship with its darkest hero. What makes Vlad's story even more complex is understanding the brutal context of 15th century Eastern Europe. This wasn't a civilized era with Geneva Conventions and human rights courts. Every ruler used violence. The Ottomans impaled victims. The Hungarians burned people alive. The Pope sanctioned crusades that massacred entire populations. Vlad was exceptionally brutal, yes, but was he fundamentally different from his contemporaries, or just more efficient? Some historians argue Vlad was shaped entirely by trauma. 6 years as a child hostage, watching Turkish executions. His father and brother murdered and buried alive. Returning to a homeland torn apart by corruption and foreign occupation. By the time he took power, Vlad had witnessed so much horror that perhaps he simply became what his world had made him, a mirror reflecting the violence of his age. Others point to specific incidents that suggest calculated sadism beyond mere political necessity, like the story of the merchant's wife and the shirt, or the time Vlad invited a group of sick and disabled people to a feast, asked if they wanted to live without suffering, then burned the hall down when they said yes, justifying it as mercy. These weren't strategic acts of war. These were the actions of someone who had lost their humanity. The truth probably lies somewhere in the gray area that makes us uncomfortable. Vlad was both hero and monster, patriot and psychopath, defender and destroyer. He saved Wallachia from foreign domination while drowning it in blood. He created order through absolute chaos. He became the very thing he fought against, a force of terror that haunted his people's nightmares even as it protected their sovereignty. And here's the most disturbing part. Vlad's methods are still debated today in military academies and political science courses. Some strategists point to his psychological warfare tactics as brilliant innovations. Others use him as a case study in how fear-based governance ultimately fails. But everyone agrees on one thing. Vlad Dracula understood something fundamental about power and fear that still resonates 6 centuries later. Romania has never escaped his shadow. Literally. Even today, as modern Bucharest gleams with EU funding and tech startups, Vlad's presence lingers. His fortress in Poenari draws thousands of visitors who climb 1,480 concrete steps to reach ruins that locals say are cursed. His tomb remains a mystery. Excavated in the 1930s, found empty, the body possibly moved or perhaps never there at all. Now let us talk about what happened to Vlad's actual body, because this is where history bleeds into horror and things get genuinely weird. December 1476. Vlad dies in battle somewhere near Bucharest, fighting yet another wave of invaders. Most accounts say he was killed by Ottoman soldiers, possibly assassinated by his own men who had turned traitor. His head was cut off, preserved in honey, and sent to Constantinople where Sultan Mehmed II displayed it on a stake. The sweet irony wasn't lost on anyone. The Impaler impaled. But where did they bury the body? According to chronicles, Vlad's headless corpse was supposedly interred at Snagov Monastery, on an island in a lake about 25 miles north of Bucharest. The monks there allegedly gave him a Christian burial despite his reputation, hiding his grave from Ottoman looters. For centuries, this was accepted as fact. Then came 1931. Romanian archaeologists decided to excavate Snagov Monastery and prove Vlad was really there. What they found has baffled researchers ever since. They discovered a grave in the spot described by old documents, right in front of the altar, a place of honor. They opened it with cameras and witnesses present, expecting to find Vlad's remains. The tomb was empty, completely empty. No bones, no remains, nothing except some deteriorated fabric and a small copper vessel. But here's where it gets stranger. Near the monastery entrance, the archaeologists found another grave they almost missed. Unmarked, unimportant, beneath the doorway where centuries of monks had walked. Inside this forgotten tomb, they found a skeleton dressed in purple and gold fabric, with a ring bearing the dragon symbol of Vlad's family order. Next to the body lay a crown decorated with cloisonné enamel, exactly the type worn by 15th century Wallachian princes. Was this Vlad? Had monks secretly moved him to protect his grave from desecration? Or was this someone else entirely, and Vlad's real resting place remains unknown? The mystery deepened when those remains mysteriously disappeared from the National Museum. Some say they were lost during World War II bombing. Others whisper they were stolen by collectors or secret societies. Official records simply say missing, but the Vlad mysteries don't end at his grave. They extend into the very land itself, particularly one region that has haunted travelers for centuries: Transylvania. Yes, that Transylvania. The name literally means beyond the forest in Latin, and once you visit, you understand why it terrified medieval travelers. The Carpathian mountains rise like jagged teeth, covered in dense forests that seem to swallow light. Villages cling to hillsides, their medieval architecture unchanged for centuries. Even today, in the 21st century, there are valleys where cell phones don't work and roads disappear into wilderness. Local legends saturate every village. Stories passed down for 30 generations. Tales of Strigoi, the Romanian undead who rise from graves to drink blood. Accounts of Moroi, living vampires born with supernatural abilities. Warnings about Pricolosi, werewolves that hunt in packs through the mountain forests. Western tourists dismiss these as folklore. But when you talk to elderly villagers in remote areas, their fear is absolutely real. I've read dozens of accounts from travelers who visited the Hoiabaciu forest near Cluj-Napoca, often called the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania. There's a circular clearing in the center of this forest where nothing grows. Not a single plant. The soil is chemically normal, but vegetation refuses to take root. Locals won't enter the forest after sunset. They report feelings of intense anxiety, being watched, time distortions. People enter for what feels like 30 minutes and emerge to find hours have passed. Paranormal researchers love this stuff. They document strange photographs with unexplained shapes, electromagnetic anomalies, UFO sightings. Skeptics dismiss it as confirmation bias and natural phenomena. But here's the thing. These stories existed long before paranormal television. For centuries, shepherds reported losing time in those woods. Children who wandered and returned with burns on their skin and no memory of what happened. Trees grow twisted and deformed in patterns that forestry experts can't explain. The famous Bran Castle adds another layer to the mystery. This 14th century fortress perched on a cliff is marketed worldwide as Dracula's castle. Millions of tourists visit each year expecting Vlad's legendary home. Here's the truth. Vlad probably never actually lived there. Historical records suggest he may have passed through once or twice at most. The castle's connection to Dracula is almost entirely marketing. A brilliant tourist scheme started in the 1970s that conflated Bram Stoker's fictional vampire with the historical Vlad. But locals around Bran will tell you different stories. Not about Vlad, but about the castle itself. Security guards report footsteps in empty corridors at 3 a.m., doors that lock themselves, cold spots that appear suddenly in the summer heat. Tourists have photographed strange figures in windows that were verified empty. A Romanian news crew that spent the night filming in 2015 captured audio of what sounds like medieval Romanian being spoken, but nobody else was there. Most interesting are the tunnels. Bran Castle has an entire network of underground passages connecting it to nearby fortifications. Some of these tunnels have never been fully explored. In 2004, a speleologist team tried mapping them, but turned back after 2 members reported extreme psychological distress, crushing anxiety, hallucinations, the sensation of being followed. The tunnels remain unmapped. Then there's the most disturbing mystery of all, the vampire burials. In 2012, Bulgarian archaeologists working near the Romanian border unearthed 2 medieval skeletons with iron stakes driven through their chests. Not metaphorical stakes, actual iron rods pinning the bodies down. Carbon dating placed them in the 14th to 15th century, exactly Vlad's era. The teeth showed signs of being filed down. One skull had been separated from the body and repositioned between the legs. These weren't isolated cases. Across Romania and Bulgaria, archaeologists have discovered hundreds of these deviant burials, bodies treated with elaborate anti-vampire precautions. Heavy stones on chests, stakes through hearts, dismemberment, faces covered with cloth. These weren't criminals or executed prisoners. Forensic analysis shows many were ordinary people who died natural deaths, but were buried with intense fear they might return. Why? What caused entire communities to be so terrified of their own dead that they mutilated corpses as a precaution? Some historians point to plague epidemics, people dying in waves, families mistaking the bloating and blood seepage of decomposition as signs of vampirism. Others suggest these rituals predated Christianity, ancient pagan practices that survived centuries of religious conversion. But the most chilling theory connects directly to Vlad. His reign of terror created genuine mass trauma across Romania. Think about it. Tens of thousands of people impaled, left to die slowly over days while others watched. Bodies everywhere, in various stages of decay, for years. An entire generation grew up surrounded by death in its most horrific forms. Is it any wonder they became obsessed with the dead rising? That they developed elaborate rituals to keep corpses in the ground? Psychological researchers call this cultural trauma response. When a society experiences overwhelming horror, that fear embeds itself into folklore, rituals, and collective behavior. Vlad Dracula didn't just kill people. He traumatized an entire nation so deeply that 6 centuries later, the scars remain visible in their legends, their superstitions, their relationship with death itself. The ultimate mystery isn't whether vampires exist. It's how a real historical monster became so intertwined with fictional supernatural ones that now nobody can separate truth from legend. Vlad's actual crimes were so horrific that later generations literally couldn't process them. So they transformed him into something else, something less real. A vampire you could kill with garlic and sunlight instead of a human being who chose cruelty as policy.